Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you, Leigh Newport. Leigh is the owner and principal designer of Stage by Design. Welcome to the show, Leigh.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Great to see you.
Thank you. Before we go into your personal journey, if you can give the audience just a brief general overview of what is Stage by Design.
Absolutely. We are a full service home staging and interior redesign company based in Loudoun County. We do serve all of Northern Virginia, and we essentially are here to market properties to maximize sellers' revenue and preparing their homes. And we give advice regarding what to do, how to do it, and basically provide services all throughout the spectrum, whether you're living in your house, whether it's vacant. We can provide model homes, short-term rentals. We even work in color consultation. So in our 15 years in business, we really have been able to expand and serve a large portion of that community, but our bread and butter is always real estate. And we're really there just to increase the perceived value of the property, as well as be an extension of the real estate agent by providing stellar marketing.
That's great. I'm sure starting off that, when you were young, you weren't thinking of doing this career. I can't wait to get into what led you to what you do today and where you are now. But before that, are you originally from the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia area?
No, I'm a native Virginian, but not of this area. I actually was born in Newport News and spent the majority of my younger formative years, if you will, in Southern Virginia. So the peninsula, Newport News, graduated high school in Yorktown, spent a little bit of time in Chesapeake before moving up here in 91, and actually was in Maryland for a short period of time for a few years before coming here to Northern Virginia. There was a 3-year detour to California, but mostly we've been here in the Northern Virginia area.
Is it 7 cities that what they call it? No. The
No.
Newport News area? Maybe I'm not.
I think it's, well, now I've been away from there for some years, but we used to always refer to it essentially as the peninsula.
Oh, okay. I have my brother who lives in Norfolk, and he's
okay.
Yeah, he's
Gotcha.
in tech down there.
Yes.
So
now so the peninsula is the other side of the Chesapeake Bay for us. So the other is more the south side.
Okay. So growing up in Newport News, what were you into? What did you like as a child?
I was just a massive tomboy, to tell you the truth. Anything I could do to be outside. I loved, ridiculous things like climbing trees, and I couldn't stay clean. I would always get in the backyard and jump in the creek and annoyed my poor mother because I literally couldn't stay clean. I literally fell in the creek every day, but loved it down there. And then we moved to Yorktown, and that's a beautiful area, a lot of history, of course, Yorktown and Williamsburg, and that's just it's a very small town feel, but it's it's right on the York River, so you do have that sense of the water. So I love that area. I love the history of it. I feel like in a lot of ways Northern Virginia is perhaps a better fit for me overall, but I'm very nostalgic about that area growing up. And it's also interesting to go back as an adult to look at history in the way that you never paid attention to it as a child. I
Yes.
literally passed the tour roads and the announcements every single day on my way to high school. But it wasn't until I took my children back years ago when they were learning about the Revolutionary War in school that I really paid attention in a totally different way. And that's always interesting and funny. And but I love that area down there very much.
Does your last name Newport have anything to do with Newport News?
So oddly enough, no, although it's weird. I went to Christopher Newport College, and somewhere back, because my husband's really big into ancestry, we are somehow slightly related to Christopher Newport. I don't even know. Yeah, so it's just kind of funny. I was married in Leesburg, born in Newport News. My last name is Newport. But honestly, a lot of the time spent down there once I got into almost more middle school is I rode horses. And that was our big family thing. I was an only child, and it became my family's focus as well.
Okay.
So since the age of 4, I wanted to ride a horse. And I wanted a horse, and I bugged my parents till about age 10 till they got me lessons. And I'm basically sure they were really hoping it was just going to be a phase. I was going to be horrible at it. I would do it once and never again. And that was absolutely not the case.
Did you compete?
I did. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was very fortunate. Was riding at a great barn, and I had two horses in my time frame ponies because I was a junior. You under the age of 18, when you're riding English, you can ride a pony, which is up to 14 two hands. But I competed hunter jumper. I actually qualified for the Washington International in equitation, which is, in my world, that was a big deal. I showed at rated horse shows, A rated. So the things in this area that you may have heard, like Upperville Horse Show, some of those, and if depending upon where you live. But that was a huge influence in my life, and I'm so excited. I even rode in college on the equestrian team for a brief time. And it's funny how things come full circle. I have, once you start working and, and you're paying for it on your own, things are a little bit different. But I've gone in and out of the horse world for many years. And I'm just so happy to say, honestly, about 9 months ago, I got back into it, and I've been leasing a horse, and I take lessons sporadically. And if you can remember and find the thing that gave you so much happiness as a child, right, and get back into it again, to give yourself that gift of doing the things that make you happy by finding the time to do that and making that a priority. I just can't tell you how happy it makes me to be surrounded by that environment that I grew up in and I wanted to be part of so desperately for so long, that I'm not going to get into that too much, but it's just a huge sense of pride that I finally did it. I got back into it in this stage of life. So
That's amazing. How long was that gap from when was the last time? And now I know you said 9 months ago you picked it back up again.
well, so when we moved back here to Northern Virginia in 2005, I had a, 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I actually took lessons again. And it was it's funny. We live in Hamilton, Virginia, and there's a lot of wineries, a lot of horse people around here. And I actually took lessons, and it was so close to my home that when my kindergartner would get off the bus, when you can't let a kindergartner get off the bus without someone being there, right? They don't just let you toddle off to the front door, right? But on Tuesdays, I would have the bus drop off at the barn because my lesson was ending, and I would ride the horse down to the bottom of the driveway, get my 5-year-old, and then we'd walk back up. So I did that for maybe about 6 months, but very shortly after I started my business, and it's a lot of balancing. And as a mom with young children, my youngest really was 2 at the time, there's just not a lot of extra time. And I really didn't allow myself a lot of those opportunities because what extra energy and effort I had was funneled into life and the family. So it's been a long time because that kindergartner is 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now that you picked it back up 9 months ago, how do you feel?
Oh my gosh. Thrilled, literally thrilled. So when you grow up in the barn, I was that kid. Okay, will you go rake the house? Oh yes, absolutely, I'll rake the house. Right? Will you, wash the horses? Absolutely, because I was just happy to be around that environment. So it's a wonderful setup at someone's home where it's a very different environment. There's no competition. I'm past that. I don't need that. But I tend to spend time in the barn after the horse is away and the saddles are just kind of cleaning up, and just it's so fulfilling, and it's such immense therapy for me that just the smells and the sounds. Part of it started in COVID, actually, when we were all stuck at home. I pulled my saddle out from the garage where it's been for many years, and it just looked sad and tired, and I started cleaning it. And you talk about visceral memory, and then also how scents can bring you back to a certain place in time. I just got out the saddle soap and just literally just smelling the saddle soap was like, oh God, I miss that world. I miss that environment. I wonder, how can I do that again? So it's been a wonderful, wonderful fit for me, and truly the best kind of therapy you could possibly imagine.
I can imagine, your life just being consumed with business and family, and this is just sort of just takes you out there for a brief moment, and you can just focus on the horse, just whatever it may be, and just like your therapy, you just said
it really is. There's no phone, there's no interruptions. It's just me doing what I like. There's also no pressure of competition. And I love that. I thrived on it. I loved and enjoyed the heck out of it. But this is different. It's really just for me. So I joke that if I'm riding today and I only want to go left, I only go left. If I don't want to work too hard, I don't want to work too hard. But I am getting lessons, so I feel comfortable. I will say it's frustrating not to be able to be exactly as good as you used to be. We won't even talk about how many years ago that was. So I have a high standard for myself, and there's a certain amount of frustration. Like, you don't understand how good I used to be at this. Why am I not immediately back there? But, again, it's all about the experience now more than any goals other than what I decided to set for myself.
Did any of your two children pick it up or no?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And my husband actually grew up around horses, but his mother rode Western versus English. He's just never really had any interest. I think he rode a little bit as a child, but no, my mother-in-law still has horses. So when we go visit her, they're there. They've been around the world, but no true interest. The older one went to pony camp and things before, but none of it really took off, which is fine. It's absolutely fine.
Leigh, you mentioned you also rode in college. Where did you attend college?
Christopher Newport.
Okay.
It was Christopher Newport College when I attended. It's a university now. I'm not bitter at all. No, it was a commuter college actually then, and now it's a really nice college. I went there for about a year and a half.
Okay. And so after that year and a half, what happened?
Well, I started working for Marriott. I literally had a part-time job at a hotel that was opening in Hampton, Virginia. And we were living in Chesapeake at that time. I graduated high school, like I said, about a year and a half in. And this was a startup. Opening a new hotel is a very collaborative experience. Everything's brand new. You're all, you have the hiring hall. Everybody is joining at the same time. So there's a certain level of enthusiasm. And I literally started as a part-time desk clerk. And I'd taken a semester off, and I never went back, not fully, because I kind of found through sheer dumb luck, I think, and a little bit of, I was good at what I did. I was great at customer service. I remembered people's names. I loved serving people. So actually, I worked for Marriott for 15 years, and I just kept getting promoted and just kept getting promoted. I was a supervisor before I could legally drink. So I went up through the ranks in hospitality as property managers, operations managers, and it provided an unbelievable foundation and understanding it's a business. It was a wonderful company to work with. And I actually attribute a lot of the success in systems and understanding the corporate background into my business, because it gave me that foundation of understanding, this is just how things need to be. This is how you hold people accountable. I mean, Marriott standardizes things to an umpteenth level. There's an SOP and a checklist for everything. And not every business wants to work within those confines and structures, but you have to have a certain amount of proven, repeatable systems in any business. And this taught me what that looked like. And then I understood how to take the pieces of it that worked for me into my own business many, many years later.
I love that. How long were you in Marriott for?
Well, I actually worked for them for 2 different stints, but essentially for 15 years in operations. I was in Hampton, and I worked on several task force opening different hotels. Actually, one was the Dulles Airport Courtyard.
Okay.
And did a little bit in Herndon, Virginia. And then I had the opportunity to open another hotel in Greenbelt, Maryland. So that's when I actually moved to Maryland, and that was in 91. Opened that hotel. And then, Marriott also has a history of significant restructures about every 4 or 5 years, right?
Yes.
Big companies should revisit and reevaluate based on market conditions, but they shake things up. They combine jobs, they take things away. So I became an operations manager where I'm actually running 2 completely disparate departments, housekeeping and the restaurant. They don't even operate the same business hours. So it was unique. And, also at that time I was, as an operations manager or a department manager, you worked 50 hours a week. That was your minimum. That's before you got overtime. So there was a little bit of burnout just from the time commitment, right? 50 hours a week minimum. And in Courtyard brand, it was a select service. It was not like a full service where you have layers and layers. So for example, if you were the front desk manager and your night auditor calls out and is unable to report to work, guess who's working overnight after working a 10-hour shift? So it's those sorts of things that there was a higher burnout rate, and I got to that. So they were essentially kind of rejiggering things again, and they had a reduction in force. And so at 24 years old, I volunteered. So none of my younger staff had to be let go. It was not completely magnanimous. I was really burned out. Okay. And I left the industry, and I did what what I didn't get to do when everybody else graduated college, I actually backpacked around Europe for 33 days on my own at 24.
Wow.
I almost aged out of the hostels. I was so old.
Wow. How was that experience?
Amazing, actually. I'm an only child, so being on my own wasn't a big deal to me. I grew up alone, right? Some people don't even like going to a restaurant by themselves. It's not anything that, I'm an extrovert. I love people, but I'm not uncomfortable doing that. So I loved it because you were never having to worry about someone else's schedule or needs. I know that sounds horrible, but I got to do exactly what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it in the way I wanted to do it. And I, tried to do things as frugally as possible because I was, again, there for a little bit over a month. And it was wonderful. It was, travel is something I've learned that you never forget. Even if and I didn't, but even if you maxed out a credit card to do it at the time, it's something that I have yet to look back and go, I really, really regret taking that trip. And once you get to a certain phase in your life, it's more and more difficult to do so. We've got responsibilities and kids. And this was a great shakeup in the middle of my life because I had such a high level of responsibility right out of college, right out of high school almost, really.
Mm-hmm.
That all my, I'm out here like running a front desk and I've got a staff of 12 while all of my girlfriends are, they're drunk at frat parties, in college. So I had that kind of, I didn't have that same, hey, let's go wild, do things. And I just wanted to experience some of those things before I got any older. And I'm so grateful that I did it. Everybody thought I was insane, at least my parents did, but.
Have you gone back afterwards to some of the places you visited while you did the backpacking trip?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I've been very fortunate to do so. And it's, I love travel. I don't want to stay in a hostel again, but slightly different level of travel. I've become a little more high maintenance. At least I don't want to rough it, right?
Yeah.
But no, I have had the opportunity to travel a little bit as well. For a time, my husband actually, who I met him through Marriott, he was working, doing international training. So before we had kids, we really had the chance to just take off for a week and go to Bruges and Belgium and Brussels. And, we went to Australia and things we couldn't do if we didn't have Miles and children and
Sure.
big mortgages. So that again, take advantage of that. I'd say for sure, because it's a wonderful life experience that, you can't do it every year and every day, but when you're in that place in your life that it makes it possible, do it.
I agree. I feel the same. I love traveling, and when COVID happened, it was just it was sad for my wife and myself.
Right.
But it's just when you go, it's a different world. It's a different culture, different food, and
I
if you're
know.
immersed there,
Mhm.
I love it. I personally love it. But like I've met people that haven't even left the United States and don't want to, and I'm like, hey, to
Right.
each their own. That's fine.
Yeah,
But I'm like, I can't comprehend it.
I know.
I need to be outside of this country just to experience other cultures and everything.
Yeah, it is an eye opener. It's, it's certainly interesting to see the different pace of life, particularly in Europe, right?
Oh, yes.
In some countries in South America, but I agree. It's just, it's a wonderful perspective. And it's great to get to do it when you can, right?
Yeah, I agree. So you come back from the trip, you're still in your 20s, and over there, are you even thinking about back home America, or when you come, you're like, okay, let me see what I can do when I return?
Well, I always say that I did not have a typical path. I didn't have a linear path, and I was a late bloomer. So no, I wasn't thinking about what to do because I was, fortunate enough, at least at that time, to live in the moment, right? It was a great opportunity. And then when I came back, I didn't have a job, right? I didn't know what I was going to do. So I ended up working several part-time jobs. And then I had almost a little bit of an epiphany. I hadn't finished college. That was something that I wish I had done, not for anyone else other than me, not because I wanted to get a particular specialty that required it, but I decided to go back to school. So I went to Montgomery Community College and was there about a year working several part-time jobs. And then I ended up getting engaged. So like, well, do I need a degree? So I reevaluated again, not linear. And I actually went back to Marriott. And in this time I worked at corporate headquarters at the logistics department with Residence Inn. And so I worked in a different capacity, coordinating training classes. And then over the next 4 or 5 years, I actually had a really big bucket list option for me. I really was excited about the training because it's in the corporate training department. And I actually became a trainer for Courtyard University for the same brand that I started my career with Marriott with. And there were 4 different centers around the US, and they had what's called survival skills training. So anyone that either came from outside the company or transferred within from another brand, but was going to take on the general manager position of the Courtyard Hotel, had to go through 2 weeks of intensive hands-on operational training at one of these 4 training centers around the country. And mine was in Herndon, Virginia. So that was a great experience for me. And I loved it. It was a bucket list kind of item. Once you get in it, I love speaking to people. Actually, it's a big part of my marketing and my business now because it's a realm for which I'm comfortable. A lot of people hate public speaking. I enjoy it, right? So I teach CE classes in my business today. I do educational pieces for realtors, speak to women's groups, things like that. And I enjoy it. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that within Marriott. And then interestingly enough, I became pregnant with my first child, the 21-year-old. And again, I'm so grateful to Marriott because at the time I basically went to my regional manager and asked for an alternative work agreement. I basically said, can I maintain my benefits, but only work when I work? And almost like a contractor, but you maintained your benefits, which was amazing, which I'm still shocked that he allowed it, which was wonderful. So it was a great opportunity to have a little bit of life balance, even within that big company, and really set the foundation a few years later for how I was able to start this business.
That's great. How did the business come about? Were you still with Marriott, or by then you were somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's see, my youngest was probably not even a year old. So essentially 9/11 occurred and I'm still working, but on almost like that contract basis. My husband had just gotten a promotion it was executive stay with Marriott, and he was director of training. But after 9/11, no one really knew what was happening, and companies were scared, and soft skills training within Marriott was completely shut out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they actually eliminated his position about 2.5 months after creating it. So my husband's out of a job. Now I still have maintained my benefits, right? I'm only getting paid when I work. But in the DC area, again, soft skills, so leadership, corporate training, development training, that was, unless you're an IT trainer, there weren't a lot of positions. So that 3-year detour I might have mentioned before in California is where we ended up. My husband is a native of San Diego, native Californian, but we ended up in the East Bay of California, and he was running a franchise Marriott out there. I was able to, work remotely. I taught, I think, 1 training class, that 2-week training class there, but then I ended up essentially just being a regional trainer. I developed a safety program for the region, and basically just again, kind of worked when I needed to, but was more a stay-at-home mom than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided in 2005 to come back, and we had the real estate agent said, I have a home inspector and a stager that's going to come through. Now this is 2005. There is no HGTV. There is no staging buzz. Staging as an industry really began on the West Coast, but it just was not prevalent. I had never heard of it. Never heard of it.
This is in California when you're about to sell your home and move back here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This is in California.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the creative side, I say, I come from a long line of crafty women, a lot of talents, but anything from my uncle was a self-made potter. My aunt she could do anything you sent her to. She could sketch, pencil, craft, whatever. My mom became very creative and crafty in her 40s and had a lot of creative outlets, from painting to florals to all sorts of things. So I genetically had a good in there. And I loved interior design, but I had a corporate job. I had this linear sort of structured position. And certainly, at that age, wasn't going to go back to school for interior design, but I was always the person who people came to say, help me pick a paint color, help me, get a couch. I'm redoing my room. Come tell me what to do. So when this person came into my house in California, she basically I'm here in Virginia. My husband calls to tell me there's another woman in the house moving things around is basically what happened. Not kidding. As a woman who's incredibly house proud, because I like to do this, I was not pleased.
Sure, of course.
I mean, I'm not there, I'm hearing it second. I'm like, oh my God, just do what she says. I don't care. But I go back right before we sell, and she's there. She worked in a different way than I do, but I just said, what is this? I don't understand. What do you do it? And she explained what it is, what the industry is. And she said, who did your house? I'm like, I did my house. What are you talking about? She said, well, if you did this, you can stage. And I remember a strong sense of befuddlement. I mean, this is one of the most stressful times in my life. I won't go into the details of that, but there was, my mother was ill, and, we were moving cross country. I had a 4-month-old, a 4-year-old. It was crazy.
Is that what brought you back to Virginia, by the way, Leigh?
It was actually, we were coming back anyway. I just hadn't told my mom. And the weekend before we were going to tell her, she called to tell me that she was gravely ill.
Okay.
So we were coming back anyway. And
you just wanted to be closer to home, just in general, or was there something here?
It was more of a life change. We decided California wasn't for us. My husband wanted to kind of pivot his career into something different. And so we supported that, and it just kind of lined up that I could be here for her. But, taking on a new career was certainly not anything I was looking to do. So but a seed was planted, and so much so that on the Southwest flight coming home, there is an actual article in the magazine about home staging and the creator of home staging and the industry and how to get certified. And I saw it as a sign, honestly.
Wow, what a sign.
I know, right? So 2 years later, because again, I had tiny children, but 2 years later, I took the certification and I started my business. I tried to work with Marriott when I came back, but they really wanted me to travel, and it just didn't fit. So I separated from Marriott at the time and started Stage by Design.
So during this 2-year period, you're still thinking in the back of your mind, maybe this home staging, one day I'll try it and see what happens.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I'm grateful. I told my mom before she passed, I'm like, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And, I don't know anything about it. It's just one of those dreams that seemed very far away at the time. But I was like, I've found a way to be involved utilizing design, right? That doesn't require me to go back and have a 4-year degree, because, there's a low barrier to entry in the industry, for better or for worse. There's upsides to that and downsides to it. But I knew I had the business ability to work at it. My husband was incredibly supportive from the get-go. He encouraged me to do this, even though, again, I had really small kids at the time. So it was, it was terrifying, but good.
So you get certified, and then day one, what happens? Because now you're a business owner, and
yes,
you need to bring business, right?
Yes. And so my first staging was a trade out for daycare with my daycare provider, because she was selling her house. I'm like, we can make this work.
Oh, so it was a barter. Okay.
Oh, we absolutely bartered. Absolutely. I mean, why not? Right.
Yeah.
I needed a portfolio, and she needed to make money on her house. So, but a lot of people really hit the ground running. They've got goals, they've got expectations, they need to pay the bills, they've got, pressures. And for me, I honestly had a very, very slow ramp up that first year. Never having owned my own business, I wasn't afraid of failure. I was more afraid of success. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but in the sense that if my business took off, I didn't have the infrastructure to handle it in my life. And in my business as a sole proprietor, a one-woman show, if I had all of this book of business, there's no way I could keep up with it. So I really spent that first 6 months and even the first year building my sphere and building the vendors that I would rely on, and making those connections so that when the business really did start to pick up, then I knew who to call for granite. I knew who to call for painting. I knew who my carpet guy was, right? I didn't have to work backwards. And then I could build things slowly enough so that I could keep up with demand. And that's exactly what I did. Those first 3 years, it was not a hobby at all, but we weren't relying on the income from my business to sustain us at that time.
Sure.
Now, after that, my husband decided to start his own business. So all bets were off then. So So we were two people running two different businesses with no full-time job as a cushion. So then we really, things changed a little bit.
And this was after the third year when this change happened? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first 3 years you mentioned, Leigh, you're developing, you're building the relationship with vendors. At the same time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, are most of the business through realtors?
Yes, we really focused primarily on staging at that time, even though we've expanded our services. But yes, the majority of our referral business comes from real estate agents, because one agent can list 20 to 40 houses in a year. So if we are part of that process, even if they're not having us stage vacant properties, but simply to bring us in on a consultation basis, because so many agents use us as part of their marketing plan to be the voice, a little bit of good cop, bad cop sometimes, but basically to be that professional that assesses the house into the minutia of everything they could do, what they should do, and help them understand what that looks like for them. It's a time saver for real estate agents, but they are our greatest source of referrals and our primary client.
So during that 3-year period, are you also building relationship with realtors in the area?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Staging, and it was really that first year where, I didn't do an awful lot. I mean, we staged homes, but
Sure.
Again, it was not bang, bang, bang. But absolutely, I did a lot of networking, presentations, and having coffee with somebody that but they're in real estate, but you know them on a personal level. So I even, the first person that I ever even talked to was someone that, although I didn't know him at Marriott, my husband knew him at Marriott. And I just said, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I want to know how staging fits into your business. I didn't ask him for his business. I didn't ask him, I just asked him his advice on how he saw staging in this area and how he incorporated it into his business. Now, 3 years later, he ended up calling me and we worked together, which was great. But I got my first referral from someone in his office by just leaving my business cards there. So the beauty of also staging properties is you leave your marketing materials, other agents come in, and there's no better testimony than seeing the space in person. So sometimes these agents hold on to your cards for years. You get cards, hey, I've been a realtor for 20 years. I've never staged, but man, I've got a doozy. Can you help me with that? So that's it's a great way to passively market your services.
So how are you, I guess I want to go, if you could take us back briefly for that first year, how are you marketing your service? Are you walking into realtors' offices and talking with them, or just leaving your material there? Or?
All the above. I did cold calling, which I loathe and detest. And I applaud anybody that can do it. I still remember calling one broker and she goes, well, I know like 1,000 stages. And I'm like, I know like 1,000 realtors too, but I didn't say that. But I realized the end, if you're going to do that, you have to drop a name. You have to say, oh, that's great, but I work with X, Y, and Z in your office. So if there's any opportunity to present at your meetings, I'd love to. And literally that same agent went, oh, well, he's good. Okay, we'll get you in. So yes, you have to make those connections, and it takes a while. You're planting seeds, but again, I'm comfortable in the realm of not only talking to people one-on-one, but those presentations in the offices. You're walking in as a subject matter expert. You have a portfolio to show. So those things are important. I also became involved in a staging association because as a single business owner, when you're really doing it by yourself, you don't have those business partners to collaborate with, to say, are you experiencing the same issues and challenges that I am? So it was a wonderful base of, other like-minded people that were able to collaborate and give you support, and we could all learn from each other. So that was a great help in my business, and probably about after year 3.
Yeah, that's good. Is most of the business now just referral based, or do you still do any of that type of marketing?
No, we do still market heavily on social media, through blogs, through videos, and just your basic postings. But we do also CE classes for real estate agents, which is super helpful. Again, there's trainings that lunch and learns. Now, those are typical or typically held in person, and there haven't been a lot of those. It's challenging to present at an office via Zoom oftentimes because the level of interaction is just not the same. The engagement is not the same. We even partnered with some of our local real estate association offices, but the same sort of thing. To get you through COVID, they would have you come in and do your, elevator pitch. but people are eating their lunch, they're not paying attention to you. So it's, I don't blame them. They've been on a Zoom call all day long. But so that was, COVID was tricky. So what we decided to do even during that was simply to provide value. So we talked about how to protect. Some agents bring their own staging items, even if it's towels and bedding, into people's houses. So we targeted a specific training to different offices that says, hey, if you are bringing these things into houses, here's what you need to do to protect your seller. Here's some alternatives. If you don't want to do that, here's some links of the things you can tell your sellers to buy. So we tried to become a point of, to basically a resource for them. And that's one of the other tacks. Instead of trying to sell to people, I would rather provide items of value to them. So when I say I want to talk at your lunch and learn, I'm going to say, here are the top 10 ways that you can overcome sellers' objections to staging, right? Or here are the top 5 things that you as real estate agents need to have in your toolkit to address sellers' unique things within their homes. For example, the seller goes, what do you think of my purple sponge painted wall? Well, if you say, I love it, then that means it's okay to keep it, right? So how do you're really biding your time until you can get your stager in there to have to say that, but how in that immediate moment, how do you even address it and save face with the client? So things like that have always been a really big part of our marketing from day one.
I love how it's all about providing value to your realtor partners that they can then utilize when they're presenting to their home seller.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you first saw this and that move from California, did you know the difference? Did you see the difference as far as the price point of, let's say, where a house would have sold non-staged compared to when it was staged?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when I started my business in 2007, the days on market in Loudoun County was 102.
Wow.
So when I'm able, when we would stage a house, and now sometimes it would take maybe 18 days to sell, 22 days, 24 days, but still that's very powerful when you're able to say, this is the same house, the same floor plan that sold for this amount and had 2 price reductions, right? And the days on market was 47, and this is 18. So it's always been a powerful tool. So we've always felt very important that, the statistics and utilizing the return on investment helps sellers understand this is not just making it pretty. It's all targeted marketing. I'm there to play up the beauty of the house and the selling points, and not detract attention away. That is part of it. But in other words, I'm not hiding or covering or being deceitful in areas that maybe are not as appealing. It just means in a room that's dark, I'm going to add more lamps in a targeted fashion, right? You're trying to find the balance and make the seller's eye go where you want it to go and make your photos stand out and be different. That's such a huge part of it, even now. And I try to tell our agent clients that sometimes dial back their processes when the market's hot, like right now. Like, what's going to happen in 6 months when it's not? And you use your cell phone to take your photos and you didn't stage. And then you have the last year's brochures to show, your luxury buyer, and all of your listings don't look good. Sure, they sold, but if your brand is luxury and value add, how are you going to say that I compare to somebody else?
That's very true. Leigh, what are some tips that if a homeowner is listening to this and they want to prepare for a sale or something, what are some simple things they could do in their home?
Yeah, great question. Decluttering is always the easiest and highest return on investment, right? And you've probably heard this before, but anything that's overly personal, religious, personal photos, collections of anything from beer steins to dolls to Hot Wheels cars, whatever you have a lot of in groupings may not have the same level of appeal to the buyers coming in that they have to you. So I always say pre-pack those. And then just getting rid of anything that's particularly large. And let me try the best way to do this. So you always have more furniture in your room than you need to live, and your staging professionals can help guide you to understand what that is. But look at your room and realize what are the points of entry that you have to navigate around a piece of furniture. That's the first thing to do. But painting is always another massively high return on investment item to neutralize your paint colors, to also look at any deferred maintenance on the outside, such as caulking, wood rot, any of those things. Buyers take a mental look at the exterior of the house and think, I need to fix this and this and this, and they're gaining those first impression points. So I always say take a very good look and assessment at the exterior so that we can continue to engage them once we come in and not turn them off on the front step.
Great advice. You mentioned earlier blogs, and you do an amazing job on your website with blogs.
Yeah.
Do you do that all internally, or is this a third party, or how do you do this?
I have an amazing person working for me. Kim Jones does it all. She actually is one of our lead stagers, and she is our content manager as well. So I started out with blogging years ago. It was just me. I actually partnered with a marketing company but this was years ago, probably 2 websites ago. But I found it was very difficult to have someone write in your voice. And, despite the best efforts, right? I'm not a particularly pretentious person. I want to be very approachable because I feel like I'm pretty easygoing, right? I mean, I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by me coming in to see their house, right? It's always stressful to begin with. So my presence, I'm not there to create extra stress, right? I'm not there to judge you. I'm not a snooty interior designer. I am a marketing professional within the staging industry that's actually there to help. My point being, I wanted to be approachable in the language that I used and the marketing message that we had, even just for the, feel of the website. I wanted to present the type of feel that you can just sit down and have a conversation with me without any pretense. So, Kim's has started writing our blogs, and she's got a great voice as well. And she's been working with me for 3 years. We're very much on the same page. So she basically writes the blogs, sends it to me. I used to change things a little bit. Now I'm like, ... okay, punctuation's done, right? So, and we do a combination of, she will present some options based upon either what's going on in the market or maybe something that's happening in the world, pop culture, or something we can relate it, or design trends. A lot of times she'll say, I would like to do blogs on this, this, and this. And then I also come up with content. I basically feed her things, but it's collaborative, depending upon how busy my schedule is that month and how many houses she's staging. But she really does an amazing job. So it's really kind of you to say that. And she's going to be super, super excited to hear it.
That's great. You mentioned when it all started, you were a solopreneur. It was just you. And you mentioned now Kim, I believe is her name, right?
Yes.
A team member. So how has it evolved, and how does your team look now?
So very different. Well, and I have to give credit to my husband, Kurt, as well, because even though it was me running the business, he always supported us from a billing perspective. Like, he's always done accounting for me. And as we got into our warehouse and really blew up the business model in 2015. And he even, he said, listen, for at least that first 6 months or a year, I'm going to dedicate more time to your business than I am to mine, because this is a period of massive growth and investment. I mean, it's a lot of money to scale up, and we're investing in our own furniture. So he not only, continued with the accounting, but he's taken on the HR responsibilities, onboarding. So essentially, first new hires have a session with him. He goes through safety in our warehouse and our facility and gets everybody set up on that. But right now, I have just a tremendously talented and wonderful gal named Wendy Palmer, who's our operations manager. And she probably hates this, but I call her the glue, because she's the glue that keeps us all together. She really takes such ownership of our business that she treats it like her own. And that's all I've ever wanted, is that you get a group of people who are as excited about what you do as you are as the business owner. And that's hard. It's your baby, right? And she really takes such ownership. She's amazing. I also have Marlo, who's an assistant stager. I have Allison, who's an assistant stager. She's a newer hire, but man, she has just hit the ground running. I'm so excited. And we just hired someone last week that will be starting next week. So, and then I have a couple of folks that kind of fill in part-time here and there. Cindy's wonderful. She's actually a professional pilot and does this on her off days. I know, talk about a badass. Sorry, I hope that's okay that I said that. But so I essentially have, a small group, but we each really kind of work within, we're all cross-trained, and we all treat it very much like a family. Wendy sees that someone's dragging a little bit after a long staging, she'll say, okay, let me take that for you and you sit down and have a cup of coffee, right? We all try to see how we're fitting in and each try to take the burden off the other so no one gets too burned out.
Was there any, I guess, pivotal point there during the whole business trajectory that, I know you mentioned the warehouse,
Yes.
but that sort of just changed the business completely and it just took
Yes.
it that way?
Absolutely. That was the starting point. So in about 2014, well, okay, let me back up. From 2007 to 2014, I partnered with furniture rental companies for any properties that were vacant that would needed furniture. But I had all the soft goods, the artwork, all the pillows, all the accessories. So, but what happened is within the furniture rental companies, their businesses started to change and the way that they worked with stagers was evolving. So in addition to the fact that 35% of essentially any staging was going to the furniture rental company, because that's the bulk of your expense, their terms were changing and it just wasn't, it no longer worked for us. So I started buying furniture, but I bought it one house at a time and I was working out of a storage unit. And at one point I ended up with, 4 houses of furniture and 3 storage units. And I realized that just was not sustainable. So we decided to go big or go home and started buying our own furniture. And we now have 35 houses worth of furniture, but, starting, you build little by little, but that was the biggest. I don't think there'll ever be a step in my business that was such a massive leap to go from working out of my house and my garage going into a full-time, 5,000 square foot warehouse. And I had so much stuff in my house, in the garage. We walled in the third bay of the garage, took the ceiling, and I started filling up my basement storage again. It took a 26-foot truck to get it from my house to the warehouse.
Wow.
I know, that's a lot of stuff.
That's crazy. That's great though.
Yeah.
What would you say drives and motivates you today?
A lot of it is my people, because as a business owner, they're counting on me. They're counting on me,
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to make sure that your people are happy, not only because it obviously affects me, it affects the way my day progresses. I mean, there's nothing worse than having somebody, even if it's just one person, that's unhappy with what they're doing on the team. So I just try to make sure that everybody's happy, is fulfilled, that no one's getting burned out. And that motivates me. I love making beautiful spaces. Right now in my business, I'm doing a lot of the consultations. So I do 3 right now a day, 9 to 11, 12 to 2, and 3 to 5. So essentially, I'm 2 hours in the trenches with people who sometimes are very receptive to my advice and sometimes they're not. But I'm doing that portion of it. And it's exciting to me because it's a combination of figuring out a puzzle, overcoming their objections, and helping them understand how these small changes can make them so much money. So that excites me. It's a constant driver to win people over. But the business part of it that drives me is just making sure that my team is happy, because happy people make beautiful spaces, make my life happy. It's kind of as simple as that.
That's good. What advice would you give someone if they came to you, Leigh, and they said, I want to, whether a home staging business or any type of business, I want to open my own business. What are a few things they need to have?
Well, a thick skin, number one. It's true. No, I think anybody starting their own business, I think they just need to understand that there is a certain part of it where you're not going to be profitable from the beginning, that you have to have a certain understanding that, can you sustain yourself financially until you become profitable, that there's going to be a greater investment before you're just seeing money coming in hand over fist, to know that it's a big mental game, to know that being your own boss is incredibly rewarding, but there are also periods that it does not stop. Or maybe that's just because I work in the real estate world, but so that there are times when it's hard to shut off that part of the business, because it is your home and your life and your business, and you blur the lines often too easily. But I also think, seriously, having a thick skin, understanding that it's not always it's just business. It's not about you, but I don't know if you feel this way, but there are some times that earlier on in my career that when things happen in my business, because it's mine, that I took that probably far too personal, right? Okay. And it wasn't even a business situation, but it cuts to the heart, because it's hard to, we are one and the same. Me and my business are one and the same, right? So to learn to get past that, maybe that's just a female thing, but that's my advice.
You just mentioned profitability and how important it is. And you started the business, was it in 2005?
2007.
2007. Okay. So 2007, was there a period, do you remember what year it was, Leigh, when you were like, "Ah, I can finally breathe now. There is some profit. There is, okay, this is it."
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we didn't, the first year, we didn't make any money, you know, but again, I was building the business. And also when you're building your inventory, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. So there's certain portions that it comes and goes that your margins are non-existent, but probably about year 3, you know, we, beyond breaking even in year 2, then we started to see that incremental change. But it wasn't until we could increase our volume, again, had the infrastructure increasing our volume to really show that. In 2000, I mean, all the way though to 2015, that's when the big numbers hit, because, you know, I spent a lot of money to get where we were within the invested in the business. But, you know, when you're able to do more, you can make more. And our business model is also not a volume business in the sense that I would rather run myself ragged and stage 12 houses a week for $1,500 each. I would rather turn away 7 or 8 low-paying jobs and have 3 highly profitable properties that are in my area, that are with clients that appreciate us. And I'm perfectly okay with that, because I'm hitting my numbers and I'm making the same amount of money as the people that are running themselves crazy to do 12.
Yeah.
So
You just mentioned your area. You have a specific area. What is that?
So we try to stay within 30 miles of 20166 because we're based right behind Dulles Airport. So for us, it's Northern Virginia. I still get requests for those outer regions like Dale City or Woodbridge. I'm going to Maryland for a great client with a massive team. You know, I'm making it work within my schedule, but when we're actually bringing furniture to those places, sometimes it can be expensive for the client because we're driving an hour and a half to get there. So in an ideal world, I would love to stay in Loudoun County and never leave the confines. That just doesn't happen though. You know, I'm from Alexandria to Western Loudoun to Annandale all in one day, but we'd like to stay and focus in just within 30 miles of 20166 if we could.
Yeah, I like how you have a focus, because sometimes, and I'm sure it probably was like that with a lot of people when starting their business, they're just everywhere. Wherever the business comes, you're going to be there. I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. I mean, I only spend, or I only invest for marketing for Loudoun County itself, other than social media. However, within real estate, the real estate agents go where the business is. So when they get their mother's sister's cousin who's listing a house in Alexandria, but they live in Purcellville, you know, so do you want to refer them to someone else when it's their family member? So that's how we end up in these odd spaces. Okay. And we just make the decision, is the loyalty more important than the distance? And 99% of the time it always is.
Yeah. Are there any specific habits or traits you feel that helped you, whether personally or on the business side of things?
Well, I don't know if either one of them is a habit or a trait, but I will say that we always operated as a bigger company than we were from day one. The first house I staged, I had my logo shirt, even when I'm doing my little trade out, right? I'm bartering for daycare and I've got my logo shirt. I look like I am, you know, ready to go. So I really attribute Marriott from giving me that structure, so that when we, you know, when we got even into the warehouse and I started having employees versus contractors, we have systems, we have a handbook, we've got daily checklists, we have all of those things that even if it's just 6 or 7 of us total, we all know our roles and we know our expectations and we have accountability for that. And so I think it's the trait is to develop and sustain a system so that everybody knows the expectations. And that's very difficult to do in a creative business. You can't have a checklist on, you know, how to, other than how to fold a towel. You know, you can't systematize the creativity, but you can systemize the expectation of the process. And that's been one of the things that I think that truly has contributed to our success, because there are so many creatives that don't have either any business background or they don't excel at the business side of the business. So therefore they create some beautiful looks, but their facilities are a hot mess, or they don't have the systems and then they can't manage their calendar. And I hear this all the time from other agents who call me because their stage are flaked. Well, we've just got that infrastructure that everybody knows where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be it. And there is a true process and a manual and a documented way to do everything.
I love that. When you're coming into a person's home or when you're presenting, are you with your shirt and the logo, or are you coming in just normally dressed? Or
so I'm dressed for my consultation today, but
okay.
So if it's one-on-one for for a consultation, I'm not in my logo shirt. When we're staging, though, we are in our because we're
Sure.
moving furniture, we're hanging art, we're all in our
Of course.
logo shirts. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. What would you say is your biggest challenge today in your role at Stage by Design?
I think it's duplicating myself. Honestly, not just mostly with the one particular service, which is the consultation, because I think when people know you, they like you, they trust you, they always want to do business with you. And I have Kim and Allison and these wonderful people that support the business and are just as talented and as I am, but maybe they haven't worked in the same capacity with this, very intense 2-hour consultation. So try to convince a real estate agent that this other person is just as wonderful as I am, I promise you, has always been a struggle. And I do the consultations by default right now because I can't stage a house by myself, but those girls can stage and I can do the consult. So getting my clients, and we do about 400 consultations a year. I'm at 191 year to date so far. So that's a lot. And that's me personally doing 191 consultations year to date.
Wow.
So trying to have others have that same comfort level. And sometimes it's just comfort and personality and years of experience. But that's my biggest challenge in trying to truly clone myself so that someone else goes, oh, whoever's available today is great. It doesn't have to be you. That'd be great.
What do you know now, Leigh, that you wish you would have known at the start of your career?
How long do we have? Well, to know that it's okay to say no, that not everyone is your ideal client, and that sometimes you're better off recognizing that earlier on, and that every client is not a good client. Some clients that give you the most amount of business but also take the most amount of your time are not, in the long run, always your ideal client. So saying no as a pleaser by nature has always been something I struggle with, but I never, ever want to overcommit to anything. So giving yourself as a business owner the permission to say no, because you no longer fear that something else won't come along the pike, is empowering. And I wish I had understood that a little earlier on.
Yeah. Coming to an end here now, what does the future look like for you in Stage by Design? Well,
we're poised for that same incremental growth that we have so far. So we're upgrading our consultation process through an app that is just, I won't say it's revolutionary, but it's certainly head and shoulders above what my peers are doing in this area. And the process we have is already much tighter, and it's much more like it's deliverable on site. It's much more professional presentation, but we're really slow growth in that, but we're kind of blowing that out of the water as far as interactive options. So we're excited about that. We're still continuing to grow and expand our short-term rental division, so that we're excited about additional options for that. So we're just looking to continue to do what we do, just more at a higher profit margin every year, which obviously is a little bit crazy with prices on our end. Everything has just exploded from 25 to 40%. So we're just trying to do what we do as well as we do without having to raise our prices any further.
You just mentioned now short-term rentals, and I just thought about Airbnb. So you're coming in and you're putting furniture for some of these Airbnbs?
We have 3 levels of service currently. We have one with just a consultation basis to understand what you would need for the space. What does the property need to, how does it need to be adjusted to accommodate the Airbnb? So even just upgrades, paint, lighting, you need to create another bedroom if you're going to try to, put in these amount of people. So it's just the consultation. And then we have an option where we will source all of the furniture, everything from your dining tables to your beds to everything you want. And then we have another level of service, which is turnkey. So essentially we can source all the furniture, but we also provide all of the linens, all the kitchen setups. We will pre-launder your linens. We will have all your soaps, your shampoos, your rugs, basically everything. It's turnkey. So you just say, here you go, with the exception of electronics. You have to buy your own electronics.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we really have a lot of options to make it as easy or turnkey based upon your budget and your time frame.
That's interesting. Has that side of the business grown? I'm sure it has, right?
It has. We cut our teeth on an 8-bedroom, 7-bathroom, 2 kitchen, 1 office, 3 living space, and a converted garage into a rec room that was attached to a winery last year. And if that didn't kill us, nothing will, because it was turnkey. It was turnkey.
That's a big one.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was amazing. But the installation, we had 60 days to prep, and the installation took place in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
That was great. We just did the sister property to that across the street a couple of months ago. But I figure if you take on something that large for your one of the bigger ones initially, everything else is a piece of cake after.
Yeah, that's true.
We know how to do it.
When you're not busy working, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Ride the horse. I love to garden. I'm a big gardener. So the peonies right now are my pride and joy out there in the garden. I like to read and hang out with my girlfriends.
That's great. If people want to find out more about you and Stage by Design, where can they go?
Well, our website is stage-by-design.com. You can find us also on Instagram and Facebook. And we would love the opportunity to help anyone who's looking either to sell their house or maybe even wants to customize their own homes for their enjoyment, but not necessarily redo anything. We're here.
Leigh, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you. I very much appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.